Hi, I'm Lansing. I'm from War Pigs. I work there as the assistant brewer with Kyle, who is the head brewer. And I'm here in Beijing because we're attending the craft beer festival that is organized by Great Leap. And we also brewed a beer with Enda and Michael Jordan and Mikkel yesterday. Besides brewing, I spend a lot of time cooking. I spend a lot of time, my weekends kind of just almost, how do you call it, maniacally looking and researching recipes. I go through phases, so I spend an entire weekend, maybe like, I spent a period of 2 weeks making ramen. So making ramen from like scratch noodles and also the broth. Yeah, so cooking, I would say, would be my next other passion. My definition of craft beer. I think that's kind of a difficult one because everyone's approach is kind of different. I mean, the scale, like the range is pretty broad. So, but I think my definition is just a continued experimentation. It doesn't, I mean, you can always, I don't know, my influences are pretty big, so even if you look at like large craft beer companies and even like the macro companies, I think you can, I take inspiration from there as well because I think you can say like people used rice or corn as a means of saving money, but if you use it in the right way, it doesn't always have to be about money. It can be about that brewing with rice and corn results in a drier beer. So I don't know. I think to me craft beer is always about experimentation, no matter with what kind of ingredient and what kind of ideas.
So what is this brewing process? Which part got you most interested in?
The person I brewed with at the beginning is Storm Brewing in Vancouver, in Canada, and that was like a really romantic process because he's a trained mycologist. But he was working at a pharmaceutical company and trying to build his own brewery, which meant shopping at junkyards and then teaching himself how to weld. So his brewery has been described as like pretty like janky. So if you go there, it's like this mad scientist looking thing. But when I started brewing with him, his mash kettle was open, so you mash in and the whole brewery just smelled awesome. So at first it was about the romantic side of mashing in, brewing beer, and now it's still about that. But I also really am fascinated with the geeky side of things, like if you use this yeast, how does it change the beer compared to another yeast or hops? Or yesterday we brewed a beer with like purple sweet potatoes and purple rice, and that's cool too. So yeah, all those things. The philosophy of War Pigs, it's pretty special because it's two owners and they're both they care a lot about the project, and they're both still they're very passionate about brewing beer, but they're kind of very different. So at War Pigs we get recipes from Mikkel, and he has maybe the advantage of actually like being in the same city as we are, and we also get recipes from like Nick and Chris, who are our bosses from Three Floyds. But I think the underlying kind of the thing that everyone shares at War Pigs is that you're always focusing on quality, and experimentation. So we do try a lot of different things. And a lot of like moving parts and moving projects all the time. We have 6 solid house beers out of 22 taps. But if you think about it, if you only have 6 house beers, then you have like 16 other beers that are always different. So So we get to experiment a lot, I think, with the beers. But so that's kind of like the underlying philosophy, focusing on quality and just continuing to experiment with lots of different things.
Is there any beer
The
you're most proud of?
Yeah, there are a couple actually. The first one I can think of is like early on in my brewing career. So this is like 2 or 3 years ago. I started brewing with Mikkel on his like it was a small, pretty large homebrew setup, but small by industry standards. It was 200 liters, and Mikkel's like he loves buying barrels, and he came all excited one day. And he said he had found like a Riesling barrel, or a barrel that used to hold Riesling wine. It was a pretty small barrel, 50 liters, and he wanted to do something special for it. So what we did was we brewed a beer with just 100% Pilsner malt, just to keep it really simple. We fermented it with champagne yeast, and that worked out, I think, quite well. So after primary fermentation, we blended it with Riesling grape juice that would otherwise have been made into wine, and then we aged it in the Riesling wine barrel for a few months, and the beer is like it's still one of the best beers I think I've ever made. So that's one of them, and then the other one is a beer that we brewed at War Pigs. We were having lots of trouble making like the Berliner Weisse style beers. So it took us like a year and a half to finally figure out how to kettle sour right and how to inoculate with the right lactobacillus strains. And then after a year and a half when we finally did it, that was also a pretty proud moment.
So the next question is collaboration brewing.
No, collaboration brewing is lots of fun because it gives brewers a chance to come up with recipes that they wouldn't otherwise brew. Because I think, talking about brewing philosophy, it's always nice to, I think it's nice to meet in the middle because, or maybe not even in the middle, but after discussions, I feel like sometimes you meet above the middle. Like the results are better than if you had just, been sitting and thinking about what to do or what to brew in your own space. So I think collaboration brewing kind of like, it forces you to think outside the box, and I think that's always a good thing. And I learned a lot about using different ingredients, brewing differently. It's something simple as, when do you add the hops in the whirlpool? It's very, very simple, but also, quite influential to my brewing style anyway.
What got you in this brewing industry?
I went to school to be a food scientist. And that was kind of a compromise between me and my father because he wanted me to be an engineer, and I was, really in love with food. But so food science was kind of the compromise, and then earlier, when I said I had done an internship with the brewery in Vancouver, it's because I didn't feel like I could really pursue food science as a career. Like it just didn't feel right to me. So I ended that, got into brewing with James at Storm, and at some point I decided to move home to Singapore, and I started working with Raymond at iBrew. He's one of the only homebrew, equipment guys in Singapore, and I brewed with him for a year and a half at the homebrew shop. And kind of the geeky side of me was like, okay, now you've done, brewing in a teach it to yourself way, but the nerdy geeky side of me needed to pursue it academically. So that is that's kind of the point where I decided to actually go into it professionally. Was around the time that I was working for Raymond in Singapore. It's kind of a difficult question for me, because I'm pretty competitive. So if I'm always trying to compete against anyone, not just other females and not just other males. It's so in that way. I don't I've never really experienced it. Maybe, you know, I mean, it's not that I don't notice that it's male dominated. I obviously do, but I never feel judged because I am a female, and I think that's kind of a fortunate thing for me. I don't think it's everyone's experience, but I think there is an advantage of being a female in the industry. And I used to work at Mikkeller and Friends, the bar, and you know, serving a lot of people over the years. I think I noticed that females have a better palate, and in this industry, it's the food and beverage industry, and I think if you have a better palate, then you're always at an advantage. I'm not going to say that all females have a better palate, and I'm not going to say that all males don't have a good palate, but I think in general, that's the advantage that I think females have.
Have you met any other female brewers who are very impressive?
Winnie.
Winnie?
Yeah. Winnie from Taihu, and also Vipika from here, from Great Leap. Winnie I went to school with in Berlin. So I've known Winnie since 2012. I've never worked with her, but I've just gone to school with her. And I think she's super cool and really intelligent. And Vipika I just met a couple months ago, but and also haven't had a chance to work with her. But yeah, you get a feeling for things like that when you talk to people. So Winnie from Taihu and Vipika from Great Leap.
为什么会从新加坡去挪威？
During school in Berlin, I visited some friends in Copenhagen. And during that time, I visited the Mikkeller bar, the original one, at that time, so the one on Victoriagade. And the minute you walk in, it looks fantastic, and there's 20 craft beers on tap. Not that I had never seen 20 taps before, but it was never 20 taps of really amazing beers that were very, very different from each other. And I kind of, that was kind of like love at first sight, if you can call it that. And so during that year, that was 2012, that was the first Copenhagen beer celebration. And I volunteered at the beer celebration. And then it was kind of from there, I volunteered at the festival. And then when I graduated from Berlin, I moved up to Copenhagen with my girlfriend, who was actually the one who introduced me to Mikkeller. And that's when I started working at Mikkeller and Friends as a bartender, and then so on and so forth. So when I found out that War Pigs was opening, I had asked to be moved from the bar to the brewery. So I mean, it's kind of I was in Europe already, so it wasn't that much of a leap to move up to Copenhagen.
去过这么多国家，然后你的酿酒过程中有没有遇到这种文化相关的障碍？
I think maybe not so much cultural. I think maybe it's also the influence of climate on the beer styles that people tend to brew. So if you compare the beers that people in Singapore are brewing compared to to colder climates, I think in Singapore, because the weather doesn't really change, you're forced to make beers that people would drink when it's 30 degrees outside. Whereas in countries with climates, well, not everyone has a climate, but in countries where you do get seasons and stuff, I think people tend to have the flexibility of being able to brew bigger beers that can that you can consume when it's 2 degrees outside, for example. And then culturally, I think the ones that are maybe most influenced, maybe not by culture, but by law, would be Germans. I think Germans, by law, tend to be a bit more rigid with their brewing style. And everyone else kind of has the luxury to play around a lot.
Is this the first time in China?
No, it's not. My parents worked here when I was a child, so the first time I was here was in 1983. That tells you how old I am. And then I was traveling. So the last time I was here as an adult on my own was in 2008. and that was more like for tourism than it is for work. But it's quite cool to come back for work as well.
你这次来北京有没有什么特别值得期待的事情？
I came to Beijing with the because I live in Scandinavia, and the demand for like really good Asian food is not there. So I came to Beijing with the expectation to like gorge myself on Chinese food. I can't leave Beijing without getting jianbing. Carl thinks it's like a hipster thing. But I don't think so. I mean, when I came in 2008, I ate all the jianbing that I could find. So far the food, of course the beer. The highlight has so far been brewing here yesterday with like the purple potatoes and the purple rice, and dinner last night, which was the grilled lamb leg over charcoal. Yeah.
除了吃的有没有其他？
I mean, to be honest, I've only been from the hotel to here to, it's all like beer and food related. I think we're going to go to the Forbidden City on Sunday, and then the Great Wall as well. So I'm looking forward to those.
My name is Wiebke. I started to work for Great Leap 6 months ago. Before that, I worked for Guinness. I did for the last 6 years. I did different roles. I started in Guinness in the pilot plant, so I was brewing on a 10 hectoliter scale, mostly for process improvement and flavor improvement projects in Africa. Then I moved on and I started to work because Guinness at that time was building a new brewing plant. So I was joining the team. We did a lot of work on improvement work, on post-commissioning, and put in a couple of CAPEX projects. Then I moved on and I worked in Africa for the last years. So that work was mainly traveling and supporting other breweries, doing a lot of, like new recipes or trying to improve their process KPIs. So that's what I did in the last couple of years.
Or what do you think of craft beer?
So craft beer is just like, so as a brewer, what you learn at university, you learn a lot about making beer. So you learn a lot about different ingredients, you learn about the history of beer. And then when you start working in the industry, you realize that, or I realized at that time, that there wasn't a lot of variety of beers out there. So craft is basically now bringing all that back. So there's a lot of old recipes, there's a lot of things that, because there's 5,000 years of brewing, so there's a lot of things that were done in the past that kind of got lost. And all of this comes back now, and there's new things that can be developed, new recipes that can be developed. And so all of that is basically coming back with craft at the moment. When as I said before, so I learned brewing at universities. I started to study biotechnology, and when you learn a lot about brewing as one of the topics, but I was so interested, I just fascinated by the process. I really like processes, and just being able to learn something where you can do where you can make your own product, which is beer, from the start to the end, was just really fascinating. So I decided that I do that as a master's degree. So you can do that at different universities in Germany. There's actually 2 of them, and there's universities in America. There's universities in all over Europe. It's not that a lot of people do that though. So it's still brewing is quite a small industry still, and there's just a couple of universities where you can actually learn about it. But that's I think it's still it's a really, really great thing that these things exist, because, or these university
Your own brewing experience, why you make that product?
So I always get my inspiration when it comes to brewing from the places I am, so that's the same in China, and it was the same in Africa. So it's all about different raw materials that are out there. There's different, there's different flavors that people like. So you look at the food that they eat, you look at all these things that basically surround you, and that's what inspires me to make different products. So in Africa, for example, it was mainly working with raw materials that I wasn't used to, like cassava and sorghum. So we made a lot of beers with that, and that's a very local way of making beer. So there's a long tradition for that in Africa, But you know, it was basically for us to learn it and to bring these products to the next level. Yeah, so it's basically getting inspired by you know, by the places you are. So don't ignore, like beer is something very diverse and should be something very diverse. So there's a lot of different beers out there, and it's not about making the same beer all over the world. It's about trying to understand what can you make in this part of the world. So as I said, like it's great to be inspired by things. So you can make beer out of very different raw materials, and like it's lovely to you know, to just try new flavors and things like that. So we did you know, we worked, for example, on a, like we were looking into Italian food at that time, and there's a lot of squid ink that they use to color their food. So we decided to make a stout. And instead of using the dark malt to color it, basically we decided that we are using squid ink, because they use that for noodles, and they color their eggs black. So we added that to the beer, and that was something, you know, that's probably nothing that you would normally use as a raw material, but it was just like the what came out of that was really interesting. So it was it was slightly salty because of the, you know, the squid ink gives it, because it's actually, you know, a product from fish, but it worked so well, you know. So, and these sort of things, you know, you just need to basically see there's a lot of things that it's like being a chef, basically. So, you know, you go somewhere, you get inspired by the things that you find in that place, and you just use it, and you know, you don't be afraid of trying new or experimenting with new raw materials and new flavors.
Female brewers will have any advantage or disadvantage in this industry?
I mean, when I started to be involved in the brewing world, I realized very quickly that there is not a lot of women working in the industry, and there is still not a lot of women working in the industry, although I think that there's a couple of more women in craft brewing than in industrial brewing. But it was very much, so when I started, for example, and I went you know, to my first lecture at university, the only person in the room that was female was me, and it was like that for you know, a couple of years. So I don't think there's a real advantage or disadvantage. There was a couple of things that I had to overcome. So, for example, it's you know, when you're there's just guys in the room, and like it's really a bit like breaking into a boys' club. So you need to you know, you just need to make sure that they're respecting you. That's not the issue. But like, see, brewing is very much. It's very much about you know, being strong and being male still, and it's just I just cannot carry around a 50-liter keg on my shoulders, you know, like a guy could. But that doesn't mean that I cannot make a beer that is you know, as good as it's not. You know, you have to not try to make it about the. You have to not try to make it about the you know, being male or being female. It's about the skill that we have and the products that we can brew. So I don't think there's a real advantage or a real disadvantage. So I try to not really make it about, you know, being male or being female. So what you do realize, though, is that most of the people are still guys, and there's just a couple of girls there. So, like, you know, people remember you because you are female. I don't know if that's an advantage for me. So, but it's, you know, I always try to you know, convince people with what I can do, and not with you know, if I'm what gender I am. So that's not. I don't think we should make that you know, the important thing. You know, I met a lot of women, you know, over the last couple of years, and I think all of them were actually really impressive because they just do their thing, you know, so they don't let anybody to get in their way. And there was, like, you know, this is the same all over the world. So, like, there's people I met in America, there's people, you know, I met here in Asia. So there's a lot of female brewers out there at the moment that try to, you know, that start to brew, or that get into this industry and enjoy it and just do their thing. So, like, I don't think there was one that I found you know, very impressive. Like, it's all of them, actually. My hobbies in day life. I love traveling, so every time I have time, I try to do that as much as I can. So I just feel it just makes all of us better people, because when you go to other places and you see other things, it just puts everything into a different perspective.
Is there any specific reasons you picked China as your next destination?
Well, it's just all about what's happening here in China at the moment. So, there's just especially when it comes to beer, there's just a lot of things happening here, and it just feels like, there has a little craft beer revolution begun, and I want to be part of that. That's why I'm in Asia. If China's matching my expectation, it is actually. So I'm very impressed by all the things that happen here around me. So everything seems to be accelerated when it comes to speed. So things are developing so fast, and that's a great opportunity. So it actually maybe even exceeded my expectations. No, there's no real disappointment. A frustration at the moment for me is, of course, that I don't speak the language yet. So, it's just harder to get through day-to-day life. It's not impossible, and there's a lot of people here that help me, and there's a lot of people speaking English as well. But I just feel like that's something that I want to focus on, because it just would make it much easier. My own career vision. So I really want to make sure, because when especially beer is something that I love, and I just want to make sure that I want to develop the quality of beer. I want to make sure that people can enjoy the products that we make. I don't think that's a female thought. It's just more as a brewer, I want to make sure that everybody that enjoys a beer or a craft beer is happy with the experience. So that's my vision.
What is your impression towards the reality?
Yeah, I met Lan Xin this year in Denmark. Actually, she's great. She's really experimenting a lot with different things, and she actually went to the same university as I did. And Winnie I met a couple of years ago. So we had at that time, Winnie was working for Sanmai. Now she works for Taihu, and. We talked a lot about what people expect from women in the brewing industry, and how sometimes life can be a bit tough, because they want to see that it's all about the physical part, while it's not. It's actually about being able to brew an amazing beer. That's what it is about. So yeah.
For example, is there any stereotype? Hey, women cannot make good beer, just guys.
Of course. So it's so the whole history of beer is actually female. So when you go back, because it's it's a 5,000-year history. So and beer was made at home. So as everything that was made at home, it was a women's job to do that. And then the Industrial Revolution came along, and the whole thing became industrial process. So it was all moved to big factories, and it was about hard labor. So men took over, and since then, the perception is that brewing is actually a man's job, which it never was. It's basically recent history that happened. So. Yes, as I said today, it's sometimes when you are in the brewing world, and there's a lot of guys sitting around you, it's about strengths, it's about being able to carry that keg on your shoulder and things like that. So which we cannot do, So but that doesn't make us, no brewers. So the definition of being a brewer is that you can make an amazing product out of the raw materials that they give you, so you are creating something. It's not about being stronger than somebody. It's about being able to brew something amazing out of, Well, women are definitely great to come up with good recipes. I do know a lot of female brewers that really make amazing products, but there's also a lot of male brewers that make amazing products. So I don't think it's a very female thing, but look at the great chefs all over the world. There's females, but there's also males. It's about being able to put a good product together. I don't know if women are better in that, but they're definitely as good you know, as the guys.
Is drinking